Okay, so we have okay. I'm dividing just in 5 parts the history of Ecuador. We have the pre-Columbian, which are our ancestors. We have the Spanish conquest, as probably you know. We were a colony of the Spanish Empire. Then the independence era became. After we got our independence, we went to the 19th and 20th centuries. And now we are in the modern days, in the 21st century. Okay, so we start with the pre-Columbian era. This picture that you see is Máscara del Sol, is the sun mask from one of our ancient cultures, that is Machalilla. It used to be the ceremonial mask of the chief of the tribe. It's in one museum here in Ecuador. It's really beautiful. It's made 100% on gold. Okay, the first cultures in Ecuador that we have archaeological registers are around the 3500s BC. So the first cultures were called Valdivia, Machalilla. In the coast, we have Panzaleos, Quitus, Caras, Cañaris in the Andean region. So as you know, in South America, we have Cordillera de los Andes, which are these beautiful mountain formations that cross from Venezuela to Argentina, pass through Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Bolivia. So now you are living in the Cordillera de los Andes. We have many volcanoes, nevados. They used to be our gods, and that divides the Ecuadorian region in 4 parts. We have the coast, Sierra, which are the mountains, the Amazon part, and the Galapagos Islands. So as we are in the middle of the world, on the 0 latitude, and we have the Cordillera de los Andes, this makes that Ecuador has a very wide variety of climates. We have microclimates because we in the middle of the world, we have a high radiation rate from the sun, but at the same time, for the mountains, we have cold weathers, we have nevados, and we have a lot of rivers. So when you travel through Ecuador, just at 30 minutes from one point to another, you will see that the climate changed, that the vegetation changed, even that the culture changed. One thing that I want you to notice when you walk through Waranda, or you go to Huánuco, or you go to any other city, is to see, when you see indigenous people, just notice the dressing, notice the jewelry, the colors, because some dress only in black and white, another use red, another use a yellow, some has red jewelry, another another people have kind of gold jewelry, how the girls use the hats. They have different kinds of hats because we have a different variety of cultures. So this comes from our ancestors. As I told you, we have culturas Valdivias, Machalillas, Panzaleos, Quitus, Caras, Cañaris, Guaranis in the Amazon. And these cultures didn't used to fight between each other. They used to be peaceful tribes that used to make trade networks between them. Okay, so the most representatives, you see, for example, this kind of doll that you see here is made on ceramic. Oh, sorry. It's made on ceramic. It's from Cultura Valdivia. It's one of the oldest cultures. So in many of the pottery that we have found about these cultures, we see that they used to make a lot of representation of women. So in the social organization of these old tribes, there used to be a matriarchy. Most of these tribes used to be ruled by a chief, but the society used to work by the women. So this is important for when we talk about the indigenous revolutions and indigenous movements, it's important to notice this. And you see this kind of jar is from Cultura Machalilla. So you see the differences between the sculptures. They used to represent the person, but they used to make a kind of mix and put some human shapes inside of their daily jars or pots or anything. And these are from the coast, and these are from the highlands, from Sierra. This is from Cultura Panzaleos. This is from Cultura Cañaris. You see the differences, how they used to mix some shapes about animals or people inside their daily stuff, articles that they used to make many things. Okay, now as I told you, these small tribes didn't used to fight between each other. They used to trade. We called trueque now in Spanish. Trueque is when you don't use money to get something. If you have a pound of corn, you can go and trade for a pound of potatoes. So that's what we call trueque. Okay, so they used to do trueque. The coin of those years was concha spondylus. The spondylus shell is this one that you can see here. This was one of the most valuable things that people can have in those years. How they get this? For example, in Cultura Machalilla, they used to make small boats. They used to go to the ocean. They used to grab a heavy rock and then they jump to the water, holding their breathing. They catch as many shells as they can, and then they go up to the surface. So they used to use this shell as a coin to trade. What they used to trade with people from the mountains, for example, textiles. Also food, obviously. They used to trade fish with grains, with potato, with corn. The corn, as maybe if you have read, probably, the corn is original from America, the same as potatoes. When European people came to America, one thing that they brought back to the Europe was potatoes, because they noticed that they can grow up in very cold weathers because it's a tuber, and also corn. So they used to trade that, and also salt. Salt was very important. They used to take seawater, put in these kind of jars, and put it on the fire until all the water evaporates, and they used to trade with shells and salt with people from the mountains for textiles, food, potatoes, corn, and gold, silver also. So that's how Ecuador used to be. One thing two important things that we can see in our inner times from our ancestors is the agriculture systems, as you see here. As I told you, we live in the Andes Mountains, so we don't have flat terrains to grow up food. So they design this kind of terraces, which gives stability to the soil, and they have complex irrigation systems. So maybe when you walk through Huánuco, when you walk through Atandahua, you will see the terraces. And at the end of the pre-colonial era, the Incas, led those years by Huayna Cápac, they conquered many of these tribes. They were a mixture of cultures. So we have in the architectural part, this is called Inga Pirca, is in the south of Ecuador. So it's a ceremonial part, is the influence of Incas. Also the rocks is important to see in these old ruins from the old tribes, because in the highlands, how they used to survive through the cold weather, they used to put rocks. They used to sleep on rocks on beds made of rocks, because the rocks get the heat from the sun in the day, and in the night they throw those heats slowly, so it keeps you warm. One thing that is very representative for the Inca Empire was their roads. They built a big highway that connects from Ecuador to Argentina, called Camino del Inca. And nowadays, there are many parts that are still standing without any damage. They were very, very good road builders, and they introduced the first slavery system in this region, because they don't have so many slaves in these kinds of small tribes that used to trade together. We don't have so much influence of Inca Empire, because we were part of the Inca Empire just a couple decades, and then the Spanish people came. Quitus, that is the tribe where used to be here in Quito. That's why the name of the capital is Quito. Quitus used to have very good observation points. Even there are some pyramids close to Quito that you can visit. It's a wide view when you see the valleys around Quito, and they say that they can see 4 or 5 days ago when they used to come the Incas to invade. So when the Incas came, the army used to be ready for the fight. So it was very difficult for Incas to conquer these small tribes. So most of these tribes were conquered by political marriages. Do you have any question? Yes. Joshua, el micrófono.
Yeah, we were muted. But I have one question. Because these roads, did the Incas also use animals to help them with carrying like equipment and stuff on these roads?
Well, the Incas introduced the first slavery system in South America. So it was called obraje, and this means that they said, okay, all people needs to come and work for the king for at least 2 or 3 years. So their technology on building the roads.
Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, Christian. Can you start again? We had a problem with the speaker.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, can you repeat the questions?
Yeah, no. Now, I was wondering if the Incas also used animals to help them transport like certain equipment across these roads.
Yeah, they used to use, we don't have horses. Horses are from Europe, right?
Yeah.
So we used to use llamas, and there are many different kind of llamas. We have llama, yamingos, guanacos. But to build this they used to transport, but for building this kind of roads, this was made by slaves. The Incas introduced one of the first slavery system in South America, even before Spanish people. So the incredible of this is that the technology is simple, but it works really good. They used to make like layers of sand, rocks, small rocks, big rocks, more sand. Also some basic ground. So they used to build this with a system called obrajes. Obrajes is a system that when the Inca Empire conquer a tribe, they don't use to kill them. They used to respect their lives in some way, but they say, okay, now you are part of us. And there was the first culture mixture that was made by conquering. So they used to take people and say, you have to work, I don't know, 2 or 3 years for the king, building roads or doing the irrigation channels of water, and then you can go back to your town and be free in some way. So that's how they used to build these temples, these roads. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
I have
welcome.
also a question. Is it working?
Mm.
Yes, okay. When was that? So which year?
Sorry,
When
I,
the Inca came? They come.
Can you speak up?
Do you hear me?
not so good.
Oh, okay. Do you know when the Inca came? So which year?
To Ecuador?
Yes.
Well, it took them many years, even decades, to invite the whole country. If you see the map, you see that this is Ecuador. All this red was the Inca Empire, the Tahuantinsuyo. So they started conquering by the southern part. With the first was the Cañari tribe. Cañaris were really strong and warriors, man. So they have to conquer them by when they marry this one son of the king with Princesa Toa, with Toa princess. So it was like a political conquering. And then they run up to Quito, taking the small tribes, but then they were in the south of Colombia, and then Spanish people came. So that's when the empire finished. I don't remember. I'm going to see the exactly dates. I'm going to tell you the next time.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, let's go. Okay, as I told you, when we were part of the Inca Empire, just a couple decades, then the Spanish came. Well, yeah, they came around. They started in the year 1530. They are supposed to arrive to the part of Ecuador. The main Spanish conqueror was Francisco Pizarro. And when the Spanish people came, the Inca Empire, we were part of the Inca Empire, started to prepare the defense against the Spanish people. So in Quito, in general, Quito was one of the capitals of the Tahuantinsuyo, that was the biggest Inca Empire. They have many capitals. As you see, they have Chinchaysuyo, Quintisuyo, Collasuyo. They divide like in small parts, in small provinces. The Tahuantinsuyo and Quito was one of the main cities. So they prepared the defense against Spanish people. And the main general was Rumiñahui. Okay, this is how this is reading. Rumiñahui was the main general that prepared the defense. And after many battles, finally they lost, and well, there's a legend that is also on some books from some priests that when Rumiñahui saw that they lost the last battle, he burned everything on Quito. He burned the city. He killed the women because he didn't want them to be raped by the Spanish people. And he said that if you want to take, you're going to take only ashes from us. And when Spanish people came, they said they found a city that was burned. They never found any gold here. So they said that people said that Rumiñahui hide the treasure of Quito. And then well, in general, Spanish people take prisoner of Atahualpa, that was the king. They kill him, and the colonial era started. So one of the main points is that they called all this song, as you see in the map, this used to be an ancient Ecuador. They used to be very big. They used to go even to the Atlantic Ocean. They used to call all this part Real Audiencia de Quito. Peru divided. The viceroyalty of Peru was like the viceroyalty of Peru was the representation of the Spanish king in South America. And Real Audiencia de Quito was one of the main territories and one of the kind of capitals of these viceroyalties. One thing that also I want to explain is that with the Inca conquer of our territory, their language became the native language, the Quichua. So when you go to Peru and Bolivia, they speak Quechua, the indigenous, and our indigenous speak Quichua. So what's the difference? That we use more the vowel I and they use more the vowel E. So many of the words are the same, but some pronunciations on some words are different. So if you travel to Peru or to Bolivia, and you learn a couple Quechua words, you will see that you will hear the difference. So okay, so then we became the Real Audiencia de Quito. We were part of the Spanish Empire, so now it appeared a new division of social organization. Black people used to be the base used to be only slaves. Then were indigenous people, criollos and mestizos, and the Spanish people. Criollos used to be the sons of the Spanish people that were born in Ecuador, in South America, in the territory. And mestizos were when the Spanish person with an indigenous person have a child, they call them criollos. Oh, sorry, mestizos. So that was the difference. They create differences, and they put a system called encomiendas y obraje. Remember, obraje is from Incas. That is a slavery system, but they impose encomiendas. So what were encomiendas? The landlords, the Spanish landlords, tell to the indigenous, okay, you are going to produce on my land. I'm going to take most of the production, and in retribution, I'm going to give you protection. You can live here inside of my lands, and I'm going to give you a little of the harvest for your food. So it was unfair because if we analyze this, they took their lands and they become slaves. And they imposed the Christianity. With the Spanish people came the Christianity. So they start building many churches. If you've been to Quito, you will see that in the old town there are more than 30 churches, small, big. They used to put the churches over the sacred places of the indigenous because it was hard for the priests to try to destroy the culture. The indigenous try to preserve their beliefs. So they see a way to impose the Christianity to build churches over the sacred places. So they said, okay, if you want to your sacred place, you have to enter to the church. They found the Escuela Quiteña, the education, the church was part of the government, was part of the society. They created the Escuela de Arte Quiteño, which was an institution that indigenous people can learn to paint, to do sculptures and these kinds of things. But all things, just all the art that we made on the years of colonialism was only related to religion. That's why we have a lot of pictures, a lot of sculptures. And for example, this is one of the most beautiful churches in Quito that it's made on pan de oro. Any question? Okay. About the slavery system, I'm going to explain you more in the other presentation.
Sorry,
This is
Christian. I have one question. You said that the Spanish often placed churches over sacred sites of the indigenous people.
yes.
Did the indigenous people still continue practicing their beliefs in secret?
Yeah. We never lose many traditions. That's why we celebrate, for example, when we celebrate November 2nd, that is Dia de Muertos, we drink a beverage made a kind of a juice. It's a kind of juice made with fruits that it's inheritance from our ancestors because they used to celebrate the death. So yeah, they used to drink the blood of animals. So the Spanish prohibited them to do that. And they changed, they use purple corn that when you cook, you make a drink, it turns into red one. They put fruits and they drink that. We drink that in November. So it's how the traditions change. It's not the same as they used to be many years ago, but the traditions change and the cultures mix. They never could delete totally their beliefs and the cultures. That's why we have Inti Raymi, that is the celebration to the sun, to the harvest. We have Kaupa Raymi, Kapak Raymi, that are celebrations related to the harvesting, to the fertility of the women. And this is important here. With the Christianity becomes a masculine society. So that's what we're going to talk later. Because as I told you, all tribes used to be managed more from women than men. And I think that this is one of the most shocking points of the conquest, that with Christianity became a more masculine society. So women left on like a second place behind the men, and we lose that equality that we have in the ancient tribes.
Sorry, we have a question.
Do you have a special date when they lost their, when it becomes a masculine society?
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Some background noise. So
Okay.
you need to split close to the laptop.
Okay. Do you have a special date when the masculine society started?
No, it's you can take from 1530 when the Spanish
Okay,
people
from
came.
then on it started.
Yeah, because they were men, most of them. They came with the priests and they started imposing the Christianity. So it's the masculine figure. It's a
It-
patriarchy system, in fact, right?
Just to clarify, Christian, with the Incan culture, that's a patriarchal society, correct?
Inca also was patriarchy, but it wasn't so masculine because women used to have special roles in the society. So that's why, for example, Incas has a like a founder of the empire called Mama Oglio. But when the Spanish people came, they put the God figure with Jesus, and everything is controlled by the men, and women only has to keep the house and nothing more. And that was like the way, because even in the with the Inca Empire, women used to be warriors also. And things that I have read, also the medicine was controlled by the women in our ancient tribes. That's why we have a wide knowledge about plants and many things like that.
Do you know if in the indigenous era, if men and women were valued the same, or if there was even like this gap of women being more important?
I think that in society, it has the same value as men and women, equality. But when you think about the religion, the gods, and the things that what they are sacred to them, the femininity, the fertilization was more sacred to them. That's why they used to make this kind of laws. Because the women, for them, the women is the person that can bring life to the world. So that was sacred to them. Is the way that how they used to respect life, and it was related to the agriculture, because they relate the sowing season and the harvesting season with the femininity. To put a seed, and after some months to take a piece of corn, for example, to harvest a crop was a sacred activity, because it's your connection with the earth. And also one of the main gods that is the earth, it's a woman that is called Pachamama for us. So it's the sacred part, is how they used to respect that femininity. And it's why they used to respect the women. So in Inti Raymi is related to the song, but for example, Kaupa Raymi and other celebrations related to the harvesting was related more to the femininity. Also the mountains, as the mountains were the gods, some are men, some are women. So there are some legends about the mountains. They were like giants that move around the Andes. So Cotopaxi was the husband of Tungurahua, but Tungurahua went with another mountain, and they say, okay, and they burned the new mountain. So that's our cosmogony. Femininity is very important for our ancient history, for our development. That's it. Okay. Okay, then let's continue. Okay, what happened in the 18th century? In the 19th century, sorry. As I told you, criollos are the descendants of the Spanish people that were born in South America. And mestizos were the sons of Spanish people and indigenous people. So many Spanish people that has criollos, they were sent to France to study medicine or laws or architecture, because here the education was limited and was regulated by the church. The church used to regulate the management of the politics, the laws, the economy, even the government through the Viceroyalty of Peru. So many criollos were sent to France, for example, to study. And in France, remember that in those centuries, the biggest empires of the world were France, Spain, and Great Britain. So they used to fight each other. That's why when they conquer America, the north of America was part of Great Britain, and France took Africa, and the Spanish people took South America. So they used to fight, and where the resources to finance those warships and those militaries came from the colonies. So that was one point, that why we don't develop as much as the main kingdom was because they don't develop so much. The colonies, they only just to take the gold, the silver, the food, anything that they can send to the war. So in these years, in the 19th century, we're talking about 1810, 1820. These criollos that went to study to France, they read these books about freedom that were part of the French Revolution, right? About Rousseau, about equality, about democracy. So the independence ideas became in that way. Maybe you have seen this picture. Have you heard about him? He's called Simón Bolívar. Okay, so he was a criollo. He studied in France, and he became with ideas of freedom. And in these years, in the 19th century, the Spanish Empire was weakened by the wars. So what they used to do, they used to increase taxes in South America, and they used to say, okay, send more gold, send more silver, send more corn, send more resources, send slaves. So the criollos start to think that, okay, we are descendants from Spanish people, but we were born here. And why do we have to pay so much taxes for a war that is happening many miles away? And with these criollos that came from Europe with freedom ideas, they start talking about, and then the first ideas of independence came. So it happened in two parts. There were two main thinkers that were Simón Bolívar and José de San Martí. So Simón Bolívar, he moves around the north part of South America, and San Martí moves around the south part of South America, and they meet in Guayaquil. This is the main monument to remember that. So in Quito, criollos and mestizos started to join together in some houses to read these books, to think about independence, to think about democracy, to think about the government, to stop depending from a king that never came to South America. But in the Viceroyalty of Peru, they get the notice that in Quito they are thinking of independence from the kingdom. So on August 2nd of 1809, the militaries of the king went through a house and killed all these men that were joined together. They only kill men in front of their wives, their children. This scenario is from the Wax Museum in Quito. So if you want to go to the old town, you can go. You can enter. You see the recreation, and they thought that by doing this was enough to suffocate any kind of a revolution movement. But just 8 days later, on August 10th, Antonio José de Sucre, which was also criollo with Simón Bolívar, and all of the criollos and mestizos that support them, joined together and declared the independence of La Real Audiencia de Quito. So that is considered the first cry of independence. It's one of the first in all of the region, in all of South America. And then the War of Independence started. It was paid with the money that has the criollos, also with the mestizos. They create an independence army. And it was led in Ecuador by Antonio José de Sucre. He was the leader, he was the main general. And finally, on May 24th of 1822, it happened, Batalla de Pichincha. In the bottom part of the mountain, Pichincha is another volcano. So in the bottom part, it happened the last battle when we finally defeat the Spanish people and we won our independence. So this Friday is May 24th. So we have a holiday to celebrate this battle. And well, in the last part, the dream of Simón Bolívar was to join all these small places together. And he said, if you join together and create just one big country that he called the Gran Colombia, we can be bigger than any other power from Europe. So Gran Colombia was formed by Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. Unfortunately, personal interests of the leaders create some problems, disputes, and it dissolved. It only lasts less than 10 years. So it separates, Gran Colombia separates in Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, and Ecuador. That was our independence. Any question?
Just can you repeat the countries from Gran Colombia?
Okay, Gran Colombia was
Sorry,
composed.
sorry. Just a second.
Okay.
All good.
Now,
Yeah.
They want to know
Awesome.
the countries which were in Gran Colombia.
Okay. Gran Colombia was formed by Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador, and Real Audiencia de Quito.
I thought it was also Panama.
No, Panama was part of Colombia, and when Gran Colombia dissolves, this part separates from Colombia and named them Panama. But Panama was part of Colombia. Used to be.
Simón Bolívar was Ecuadorian or?
No, he was from Venezuela. Antonio José Sucre was Ecuadorian.
Ah, sí.
Okay, if you're interested in independence, there were also a couple women that were that participates and were part of the independence movement, and they were two of them were from Ecuador, and it's interesting their history. We also can talk about that if you want to have a deep information about that. Okay. Then after the independence became the 19th and 20th century. And it happened many things, okay? When we became the independent country, our current money used to be the sucre. Our money used to be called sucre for Antonio José de Sucre. So let's check. With the 19th century, it appeared a new slavery system. Indigenous Black people weren't free at all because the criollos that were descendants from Spanish people took control of the new country, but they keep the slavery system for the lands. So here appear a slavery system called Huasipungo. I will explain you that when we talk about the indigenous movement. And also if you speak a good Spanish, you can read this book that is called Huasipungo by Jorge Icaza. So we still have slavery systems. The church used to be part of the government still, used to control education, used to control economy. And after the independence, many internal conflicts happen around the Ecuador. Many of the biggest landlords wanted the power, so they start to fight. Our first president was from Venezuela, and he created laws just to benefit him. So we have some revolutions, some people that used to fight against him, and I don't know, some people from here appear a rivalry from the coast and the Sierra. The landlords from Sierra used to want the control of the country, but people from the coast, landlords of the coast, also want to be the president, so they used to have ideological disappointments, and we have internal conflicts. Until the liberal revolution, almost at the end of the century, appeared, done by this general called Eloy Alfaro. He was a liberal thinker, and when he became president, after he created a revolution inside of the country, he said, okay, we have to definitely separate the church from the state. And in this point, that's why we call liberal revolution. The church was separate from the government. The education was now, we call laica, which means that it's not controlled by it's free and it's not controlled by the church. He created many changes in the politics of the country, and his most iconic work is that he finished the railroad in Ecuador. As you've seen, we have all these mountains, so it was very, very difficult to build a train in Ecuador, and it took many years. Many people died. They used to work with dynamite, and with the railroad, they joined the coast, and Sierra, the highlands. They joined together. They could send, in this massive transportation way of those years, they could send products from coast to the mountains, from the mountains to coast. And finally, it's a kind of union that we have as a country. Many people, people stop fighting that the coast versus the mountains, and we become as one with a railroad that join together many main cities around Ecuador. Okay, in 20th century, we have many wars with Peru. We have had a lot of wars with Peru. Because they said that as all this part of South America was Tahuantinsuyo, they used to believe that all of that territories belonged to them. So they used to invade Ecuador. And as we have internal conflicts, they found easy just to take parts of the territory until you see finally the shape that we have now as Ecuador. So we have many conflicts with Peru. And in 20th century, around the 50s or the 60s, in all South America, happened many military dictatorships. You have read about Argentina and Chile, and Chile was Pinochet, Argentina was other militaries, also in Brazil, Peru, and we also have a military dictatorship here. They took control because, as I told you, in the government, we always have internal conflicts, protests, strikes, people against the main government. So in some points, the military took the control of the country. And in the years that they took control of the country, the oil exploitation from Ecuador in the Amazon started. That's an important point, because after the oil exploitation, we are the country, the #1 country that exports bananas. We also export cacao, so we were one of the biggest agricultural exporters of the world before the oil exploitation. Now we depend strongly to the oil, and it has caused many problems to our economy. And in the later part of the century, finally we returned to democracy. The militaries returned the power. They made elections with our first president, that was the first president back again to democracy, called Jaime Roldos. He was killed. And since this event, in the political part, happened many things: bad governments, corruption, inflation, many problems. And at the same time, the indigenous movements get forced, appear new leaders, they start to join together, they start to move, they start to protest. So at the end of the 20th century, specifically in 1999, we suffer a strong economic crash in the country. So we couldn't support more our economy, and we have to turn our money to dollar, and the dollarization approved. So any question here?
What exactly were the indigenous people protesting for? Were they still in a slavery system, or did they have less rights than mestizos or the Spanish?
Yeah, they don't have rights
Yeah.
until well, in the 80s happened the Reforma Agraria, the agronomy reformation, where they finally become totally free and they have their own lands. So until that, They were slaves since the Incas through the Spanish people and to the new republic. They changed the way of slavery, but they used to be slaves. They used to have this new kind of slavery system, they have a debt with the landlord, and they have to work to pay the debt. But as the landlord give them, I don't know, dressing and housing and protection, they used to also have to pay for that, so this debt never ends. And when they used to die, their sons and their daughters used to inherit this debt. So they used to work until they die, and then their families used to have to still pay this debt. So are modern ways of slavery. And it happened through these centuries, many small indigenous movements that were slaughtered by the government, by the landlords. But at the end of the 20th century, when they finally joined together, you will see this flag, or you will see around this flag with many colors. It's not the LGBT movement. This represents all the cultures in Ecuador that are joining as one. It's their flag. Each color represents a different culture because they consider them as different nationalities, as different ancient people. So you will see around Guaranda, Tandagua, you will see flags like this in some parts of the houses, which represents the fight of the indigenous for the rights. So this movement got really strong at the end of the 90s. Okay. Okay, and now current. See this? See this picture? This is the government palace. In the year 2000, just when we were changing the century, our economy was totally crashed. The inflation was really, really, really elevated. And the president decided that we need to destroy our current coin and adopt dollar as the main money the main coin for Ecuador. So the indigenous moved to Quito, and they were supported by the militaries. First, militaries fought against them. Then they support them, and they took the government palace. They removed the president, and these were one of the most strong protests around the country. They blocked roads, and it was was the first time that people removes a president by taking the palace. So dollarization came, and since the 90s and 80s, we have a lot of government corruption problems. This is why I'm going to explain you this when I will explain the political situation of Ecuador. It's very funny. It's very interesting. Yeah. And this happened to create more social movements and indigenous fighting for their rights. So we have corruption governments, and also we have social movements that were created because of the inefficiency of the government, of the corruption, and people that were asking for real solutions, for social solutions, to think about the social problems. And one of the biggest movements is the indigenous movement. You see the flags here. to fight for their rights. They were fighting for education, for health, for freedom, to respect their lands, to respect the forests. And in the city, people were fighting also for the same things. For have a better economy, more opportunities, equality. And until now, one of the biggest events was, well, we have to face COVID. Now we are facing a problem of narco traffickants, drug dealers, violence is the main problems now. But most of these problems are related with correísmo. In 2007, he became the president, Rafael Correa. He was 10 years president of Ecuador. He changed the constitution. He was part of a movement that they called that was the 21st century socialism. That in that decade were around South America, but we can say that they made some good social upgrades for population, but at the same time they were very, very corrupted. They allowed narco traffickers, drug dealers to come to the country. So that's part of the political situation. It's a little long and a little complex. So that's the next class. So if you see, this is not only in Ecuador. We as South American people, we share many traditions, cultures, ancestors with the other countries. So if you read about the history of Peru, or Colombia, or Argentina, or Chile, or Bolivia, or Paraguay, Uruguay, you will see that it's similar. Small tribes, Pacific tribes, the Inca Empire, Spanish conquest, the independence, and then the Republic, bad governments, military dictatorships, and finally we have what they are calling the new democracy. So that's a brief history. Questions? Do you have now a context? I hope this will help you to understand, because indigenous people has a deep resentment on their hearts. And when I will tell you about the indigenous movement, you will see why they have that resentment, and it's because how they have been treated, how they never have rights, and only just from 40 years ago, the last revolution gave them the equality that they were finding. So I want to hear, what do you think? Do you like? You don't like?
It was really, really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a really nice overview.
Yeah. So as I told you, well, as I told you, if you want to focus on one specific part, one specific topic, just let me know. So I have the information. I just have to put things together, and I can make a presentation for you to make it understandable for you.
I think Yasha has a question.
I had one more question.
Sure.
I wanted to ask, like, the dollarization in Ecuador, it often, of course, came with quite some issues. But at this point in time, would you say it has had a positive or more negative impact than if the sucre was kept as a currency?
Well, the first years you can notice that, but now that we have been around more than 20 years with dollarization, and we can compare with the other countries. We have a certain stability in our economy, and it's because of dollar. Because what happened in Argentina, I don't know, or Venezuela, I don't know, their economy is totally crashed. They have a devaluation stupidly elevated, and it's because what the governments do is through the national bank, they take the dollars that come from exportations from the commerce, and they print without a control. They print more national money, and that creates an inflation and a devaluation of the money. So in Ecuador, even with the socialist president that we have, that he stole millions of dollars, the country never passed through that devaluation because they weren't allowed to print dollars. They have to buy dollars to the US, and they used to control the amount of money that they sell to the country. So it's now, I think it's one of our strongest points in the regional economy. We have some disadvantages that respects to the rest of the countries. Some things are expensive. For example, to buy a computer or a cell phone in Colombia is cheaper because they import in dollars and they change to their current money, and then they devaluate, and things are cheap. That's why there are many people that goes from Ecuador to Colombia and Peru to buy things or to import things from those countries. But in the internal economy, it's a strong point. So it's what is Javier Milei now in Argentina is trying to do. He's trying to stop the inflation. They have a inflation that is devaluating every day their money. So he's trying to stop that with several policies, and then he tried to change to dollar because he said that it's a kind of a miracle that helped Ecuador to survive all this government corruption and all these things that have happened in the last years. But I think it's positive. It was difficult the first years because it's difficult to change the money of a country. As you've seen now, around Waranda, around these small towns, it exists small markets. And in the cities, it's easy to change the money because the banks retire all the old money and give you dollars. But in these small towns with markets of products, animals, agricultural products, they used to have to militarize a couple weekends and force the people to change the old money to dollars. So people has to get used to that. Many banks went bankrupt. Many people lost their savings, their life savings. Many people died. And it was at the beginning a social problem, but in time, if you analyze the economical part and also the social part, it's a benefit for us.
And I don't know if you touched on this, but that was also the time in 99 where there was a lot of migration to Spain. Can you discuss that?
Yeah, in 1989, many people went to migrate to Spain, but it was because of the economy. Especially many indigenous people migrate because they have the door open to go to Spain. They need workforce for their countrysides, so they allowed many indigenous people to migrate to Spain. And as I told you, the inflation was crazy. In just 4 years, $1 in 1996, $1 cost 3,000 sucres, And in 1999, $1 cost 25,000 sucres. So imagine how expensive were things. People were losing, many banks went bankrupt, so people were losing their life savings. Unemployment, many strikes, so many people migrate to Spain those years.
Right. Well, you know, in summary, God bless America. Thank you, Christian. A really insightful presentation. And yeah, if you guys want to get in touch with Christian and ask him any follow-up questions,
Yeah.
we'd be happy to help. Yeah. So I'll share his number.
No,
Alright.
this is the from el terreno. I'm going to put my number now.
Yeah, I'll share it in their group, so no problem.
Yeah, sure. Si estoy todavía en el grupo del terreno.
¿Quieres que te agregue? ¿O quieres
Claro.
que te agregue en los grupos de los proyectos específicamente?
Vele tú que es más conveniente.